All right, I'm going to show you how to make something like this right here. I call it just a geometric landscape. You can make it with all sort of different geometric shapes, work pretty cool. But we're going to start from the very beginning, and I'm using Photopea. It's a free online photo editor, and you can just click on the very first one that shows up in your Google search. And I'm going to open from computer. So I have my photo saved on my computer. It's this one here. And I'm going to hit open. It's going to load it up. If I want to fill the frame, I can double click the hand tool. That will fill things up there. I can see that it's not quite level. So I'm gonna adjust that first. And I have the rulers on. You might not have your rulers, but if you don't have your rulers, you go to view and you select rulers. It puts this up here, and I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to put my cursor up in the ruler and click and drag down a guideline. And this way I can put it in here. I can use it as a reference to get things level. From here, I'm going to go to edit and head down to free transform. And I need my cursor to have these two arrows, a rounded line there, and I'm going to click and drag and hold it down and looking at my guideline until I get it pretty close. I think that might be pretty good. Okay, I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard, and then I'm going to crop out. Since I have a little bit of checkers showing through, I'm going to crop it. So heading to the crop tool, I'm going to pull just a little tiny bit of crop in there and get rid of that. And just click and drag, and I'm hitting enter on my keyboard one more time. Okay. Oh, I'm going to clear that guide. Heading up to view, we are going to clear guides. All right, now it's time to make our selection. So I'm going to head up to my tools, and I'm going to click and hold down on the rectangular one, and I'm going to go to the ellipse select. Now I'm going to click and drag. If you want a perfect circle, you want to hold down shift. Shift will force it to be a perfect circle. I'll get about the size I want. And now I'm going to move it over. I was going to try to. Let's try it one more time. I'm going to draw it out, holding down shift, making it the size I want, and then grabbing it with my cursor here, moving it to where I want. Right about there should work. Okay, so the next part is a keyboard shortcut. I'm holding the control button and J. Control J makes that selection onto its own layer. And we can see that if we turn off the visibility here. So we have that exact copy right on top of it, and it's on this layer. Now we're going to rotate it around 180 degrees. Heading back to edit, free transform. Waiting till my cursor is that rounded double arrow. Click and drag. I'm going to hold down shift also because it's going to lock it in and make sure it's not just a little bit off. So holding shift is a good idea. Okay, mine has this line in it, and I'm going to line it up with this line. So I could use my move tool, would do it. Another thing you could do is just use your arrows if you need to move something along. So I'm holding the up arrow, moving it up to line up, and that looks pretty good right there. All right, we're going to make this black and white now. So I'm heading down in my layers panel, and I'm going to make a new adjustment layer, and I want it to be black and white. So there we go. Black and white now. I'm also going to add some contrast. Same spot, new adjustment layer. And I'm going to brightness and contrast this time. I'm going to add a little bit of brightness and quite a bit of contrast. Something like that. If you want to see the changes that you've made, you can always click on and off the visibility on that adjustment. Click in the eyeball icon here. Okay, we are going to kind of soften the edges around this selection. So I need to make sure I'm on that layer. So I'm selecting that layer, and we're going to add a layer mask. Add raster mask here. It adds an extra rectangle to my layer. I'm going to get my paintbrush. There is some other things that look like. It's called the brush tool, and that's the one you want, just the brush tool. And the other thing I need to do is make sure that black is in front down here. So black will take it away and white will bring the image back. And my brush size is super small right now. I'm going to head up here and I'm going to make my brush really big, and I'm going to lower this hardness level. The hardness level is how much feathering to the edge of the brush is going to happen. I'm just going to put it at 0. So it's going to be a really feathered soft edge instead of a harsh crisp edge. Okay, I'm going to go around the edge of this circle, kind of fading the edges, and I don't even have to be on the circle since I have that soft edge. And I'm just going to soften that a little bit and go around the edge. If I go too far and I didn't mean to do that, you can always do edit and undo would take you one step back. The other thing you can do is you can head over and switch white to be in front over here, and white will bring that back. So white brings back the image and black would take it away. Let's switch back to black for a little bit and something like that. That should work. Okay, we are going to make a little glow around our circle now. So I'm going to right click on my layer and I'm going to duplicate the layer, and I'm going to have 2 copies of it now. And I want the copy that's on the bottom. Okay, we got that copy. This time I'm going to make it really bright, but I'm going to do that up top here. I'm going to do an image adjustment, and I'm going to do the brightness and contrast, and I'm going to make it as bright as possible and say OK. You can see a little bit of that effect now. We're also going to blur it. So we're going to do a filter up at the top. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And I'm going to crank this up. We can kind of see what's happening. If you want to see the change that it's making, you can click on and off the preview. So there's before and there's after. And something like that might be okay. We'll say okay. If you want your blur to be a little more intense, we could make this layer bigger. We're going to head back to the old free transform, edit, free transform, and I'm going to zoom out a tiny bit. I'm doing Control- on my keyboard to zoom out, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. We can see that glow coming through more now, and this side a little bit bigger. Something like that. I could adjust some of the other spots too if I wanted to. So you can see how that changed it. I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to double click my hand to fit back to the screen. So there was the change I made. If it's too intense for you, you could also lower the opacity on this too. You can make it a little more subtle if you wanted to. Okay. Next, we need to put in a shadow at the bottom here. So I'm going to select the background layer, and I'm going to make a layer above it. So I'm going down here, and I'm going to click on New Layer. We're going to have a new layer here with our shadow, and we're going to go back to our ellipse select. It might be hidden for you. And this time we're going to make an oval. I'm going to click and drag out what I think would be a good shadow. You definitely want to go with the direction that your light is coming in of where that shadow might fall. Okay, I'm going to fill it with a dark color, and I think I'm going to use a gray instead of a black. So I'm going to get my eyedropper tool, which is a color sampler, I guess, in Photopea. Holding down the crop tool, getting the color sampler, and I'm going to click and find myself a nice gray color to use. Did I use the wrong tool? Let's see. Oh, there we go. Eyedropper. That's the one we want. Okay, I'm going to go through eyedropper and select a gray color. And I'm going to get my paint bucket tool, which is hidden behind the gradient. Paint bucket tool. And I'm going to fill in the selection that I have here. Next, I'm heading up to select and deselect. Get rid of that selection. And we're going to add a blur to our shadow. Using that same filter, we're going to head to blur, and we're going to do the Gaussian blur. And we'll crank it up. Changes may not have been saved. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Okay, we're going to crank up the blur to a spot we like, and something like that. We'll say okay. There's our shadow. You could move the shadow around too if you wanted to, where you think it might look better. One more thing, I'm going to add one more highlight onto my circle here. I'm going to select that circle layer. That's the layer. And I'm going to add a lens flare to it. So under filter, we're going to go to render, and we're heading down to lens flare. And we can see it showing up here. I can also click and I can drag around where I want that lens flare to go. You can also adjust those things on here. We'll adjust it, but sometimes it's easier to drag on the image itself. So you can kind of adjust where you want it to go, going with the direction of where the sun is coming from. Makes sense. So once you get it adjusted, and I might lower the brightness on it too, make it a little less intense. So adjusting that, and I'm going to hit OK. And I think we did it. So here was the original. Here's the one we just made. And let's look at saving this. So under File, you can hit Save. You can save or export as different file types. PNG would be a good one. So when you click on there, this is a zoomed in version. Some people freak out a little bit thinking that it's going to look like that when it saves, but that's a zoomed in version of it. PNG, and you can go ahead and hit save if you're ready. All right, I think that's it.